Hello and welcome to this update to CineTracer Meta. Today we're going to be taking a look at the updated building system and some overall changes to the system that I've done over the last week or so. So to start, we're going to only build in this little floor tile here, but as time goes on, we'll allow for bigger building spaces. However, I just wanted to keep this kind of like compact while we're developing these new systems. So over here are some walls. And what's new about this is that they're going to have a little hand icon. When you click on the hand icon, they're going to allow you to snap them to this grid here. Each one of these grids is a meter by a meter, and they do what you think it would. They just snap to it to make layout easier. If you scroll your mouse, you're going to be able to rotate them. So for now, we're going to put this one, say, right there. We can grab another one over here and snap it right next to it. We could make a corner, or we could put it here. And so that's how all of these walls are for now. You'll see that if I come off the grid, it kind of goes over there. Doesn't like that. But again, for this demonstration, we're just building on this little grid here. And it's also new that a grid shows up at all. Right? That's kind of a new idea. Makes a lot of sense. I think it helps this snapping system out quite a bit. So I'm going to put this wall back over here. That's the one with the window, and we'll have different types of walls with doors, different sizes, maybe even be able to make your own size. However, to make this as fast as possible and as easy, having fixed sizes is really the simplest for these types of apps and games. So the next thing to show, now that we have our first wall over here, is to look at these cabinets. These are perhaps not the most exciting thing in the world, but if you want to make kitchens, bathrooms, and pretty much normal residential area interiors, you're going to need these. They're kind of a core building block of the system. And you will see that if you have 5 of them, that they're going to align pretty perfectly to 2 of the walls. So that was the math and design that I figured out. These are all based on real-world US residential dimensions, and put a lot of work into making sure that these all snap together nicely, and we'll have, of course, different versions of them with sinks and whatnot, but we're still very much in the designing overall how this is working. And these have a very special way of snapping to the grid like this, so that it makes it easy to line these up. So even if we were to move this wall back a meter, these would all very simply snap back together like that. So that is the walls and the counter, and showing this new movement system that's on the grid for these ones. Next up, I'm going to grab this couch from our MetaHumans. I'll put them right here. And this system works the same way as shown before. However, there's a little hand icon now to get them to move. And I haven't done much updating on the MetaHumans themselves as far as this. This UI is going to change quite a bit, but they probably look a little bit better with some clothes on. And these are 2 new MetaHumans that we have here today, and they've been generated in a very specific way to make them perform well on gaming, on consumer hardware, not full-on workstation. So there's some clothes for them, and people have mentioned that oh, this pose isn't the best for this character. You are, of course, able to edit your own poses as you see fit. These are designed to be kind of jumping off points, or if you're not that picky about the pose, that just, very generally they are sitting, but you're able to come and adjust them as you need to. Not that this is the best final result, but you get the idea. The idea is that this is to give you a quick pose, and then you can edit it from there, and we'll add more and more in there. So that's a bit of a difference as far as selecting things. To move things by default, really, it's going to be about finding this hand icon, clicking on it, and then depending on the type of object, they're going to have different snapping rules. MetaHumans have auto-posing when it comes to couches and things that should have auto-posing. This is another example of a different type of snap moving. This picture frame will basically try to orient itself to whatever it's on. So on a MetaHuman, it's a bit of chaos, but against, where you would want it. Normally a wall, that's working out. And pretty similar with this one, we're going to have to spin it around. This is our wall shelf. So I'm going to bring in one of these props here. And I believe I've shown this before, but it's slightly different now. If we switch to our dressing tool here, you'll see that a bunch of blue boxes show up. And what we can do now is click on the blue boxes, and it will automatically populate something into it that hopefully looks okay. Now up here, these aren't the best examples. We'll have different ones. These inserts are specifically made for our shelf here. So these fit perfectly in here, pretty quick to add them in. And we'll have different variations of that. But an update to our dressing tool again is that it's like, we have this dressing tool, but like you need to know where you're able to dress things. And so we've added this little preview. I think a similar system will probably happen for our MetaHumans, because it's like, okay, well, they snap somewhere, but where do they snap? We'll have to kind of show where that happens. Next major thing that has changed is on, let's say, the lights. So we're going to grab this light over here, and I'll put it on this here. So at the bottom for this light, you will see the new UI down here. It's still work in progress, but the idea is to allow you to see as much of the scene as possible and not have a very big UI that's usually on the side. And what you can do is click and drag these sliders, as you'd expect, to be able to change their brightness. And then you can also click on them to be able to type it in. So we'll say like 50. On this light, we can change the size a little bit. Actually, no, on this light, we shouldn't even have this, but it's more for this light that we'll see in a little bit. But technically, this light really is that light there. Pretty much the same thing. But what's new, again, with these new UIs that we're experimenting with is this new color selector here. So you click on the color. It'll probably say color eventually. And what we can do is turn up the saturation and then again click and drag to get different colors. So typically in if you're going for like a tungsten-y look, you do something like 30 for orange, and then you want to play with the saturation. This is kind of like an LED light, and something like down here might be more like your 4500 Kelvin look. We will consider adding Kelvin to the cameras and the lights, but however, this is the simplest way to design it for now. It's possible that we make a mode where you can switch from HSV, which is like how LED lights work basically, to color temperature, in which case you couldn't make it like purple or something like that. It would basically go between like warm, orange, and blue. So it's really kind of just a remapping of this, but we could add that in as well. But this is a look at our new type of UI. It's much more minimal. Has a lot more things that need to get added to it as far as like being responsive and whatnot. But the idea is to keep this as simple as possible and not obstructing the view as well. So this light is going to have the same thing. We can make it brighter here. We can pump up the saturation and then pick a color, right? So now it's like I don't know. It's a blue and an orange scene. People do that, right? So that's a bit of looking at building and assembling the set and generally moving things around. And we have a little bit of an update to the camera. So I'm going to click the hand here. This is how we move things now, or it's the main way we move things. And what we do now is click on this camera icon, and you're going to go inside the camera. So we're going to float over here. You actually cannot select things anymore. That might come back. But for now, when you left click, you're going to actually focus on whatever it is you clicked. So the default behavior of left click is now currently to set the focus, which you will see down here. And you'll see our new UI design applied to our camera. Still a work in progress, but overall, I think the direction is pretty nice. I'm actually going to slide over here because I kind of want that light in the background out of focus. So what you would do then is, of course, start to move your slider for focal length. If you're on like a zoom lens, this focal length does happen. If you want to stick to prime dimensions that kind of exist in the real world, feel free to just type them in. We will eventually have more options for changing the film back, which will allow you to simulate different types of cameras and even vertical cameras if you wanted to do it that way. But again, we have our much more minimal camera UI. It's down here. And you can manually set the focus distance if you like. You could type it in, or you can click, which will get you close, and then adjust it manually here. We have Aperture. This will take more explanation over time, but it is going to make the camera or the image darker, as you'd expect. But what it's primarily doing is making the depth of field shallower. Is one of the main things that this is doing here, just like you would in the real world. So if you wanted a very shallow depth of field, like a 2, you would then use your ISO, which is basically just exposure compensation. So the ISO in this game does not work like you would in the real world. You're going to use this way more fluidly, right? We're not going to try to be like, oh, perfectly 400, 800, whatnot. This is really supposed to be quite smooth and just set your exposure from here. This is really kind of setting like how much depth of field you want. And this is going to be kind of setting the exposure. That's the best way to set this up in Unreal Engine. So it's not perfectly like reality, but hopefully it's close enough that that makes sense. I'm going to type this one in here, 50. And again, you left click to change focus. And it's not going to always perfectly get it. That's kind of just how the collisions work in the game. It's never going to perfectly hit everything, but it will get you pretty close in the ballpark, and then you should be able to adjust this with your mouse here. Also new in the camera is that you can lock it. So now with that lock icon, you can't change these sliders, and you cannot move this camera if you tried. So that's lock, unlock. Again, we're back able to do it. 50, I can move, etc. Locking it, now you can't change it. This is not new, but again, in the timeline here, if you like this shot, you want to save it, you're going to click plus. You won't see this stuff. This is like developer end, and it's going to save your shot. You could then change this up a little bit, go to a 34, my favorite focal length. Come back out here, right? Focus on her. Maybe that's good enough. Take another shot. I hit it twice, I think. Oh yeah, so that bugs it out. Hitting it twice, not currently supported. But if we didn't hit it twice, we wouldn't have this one, and now we can switch between these two shots, and it's going to allow you to, put together your sequence. To get out of the camera now, you're going to click this little eject button, and with the camera still selected and still having our timeline here that can be hidden away now, you'll see that the camera will move to the correct position from where you took the shot. So, other than this being a problem, the system is definitely coming together. I'm pretty happy with how this snapping is working. We'll eventually allow you to snap outside of just the floor, but for now, for programming ease, I've limited it here. And I'm going to try to give, on our first release of this, enough options that you can pretty closely create either a real-world location that is in this kind of architectural style, or, again, just kind of prototype a scene that's just kind of generically again, in this style. So it's not perfectly made for recreating to the perfect dimension a real-world location, but it should allow you to get into the ballpark. So we'll have a couple different sizes, windows, doors, etc. And hopefully on the next update video, I'm going to have the paintbrush implemented so that you can actually use it correctly. I can show it here. Currently, it's just going to change the wallpaper to green. Actually, it's not even working on that one for some reason. That's quite odd. That's very weird, actually. This is how this one's supposed to work. That one doesn't work at all. Is it because it's selected? That's very odd. Not that I should be debugging this. Oh, okay. Well, anyway, the paintbrush is a work in progress. I'm just getting the base mechanics to work, but this paintbrush is going to have a UI down here that allows you to choose what material you want and what color, offset of it, etc. So that's a quick update, or maybe a rather long update, but necessary to show the direction of this new version of CineTracer. It's very much a focus on building sets that are about this size, as I've given this 10 meter by 10 meter kind of stage to build in, and a much simpler approach to the UI. Hopefully that works out for everyone. And of course, these stars of the show are the MetaHumans right here. We're going to have many more, even for launch, and you'll be able to change their clothing and whatnot. And you've seen pretty much the beginning prototype of the posing system. You can make your own poses and save them. I'm going to give you the preset ones. And the face is editable. And again, we're going to give you quick poses for stuff like this. And all hoping to make prevising in CineTracer much faster and better looking now with MetaHumans and Unreal Engine 5 lighting, which we haven't really covered very much here. Very interested in initial feedback. We are doing wide sweeping system changes right now. Whole UIs are going away. Concepts of how things are working is very much in flux. But again, the idea is to keep this very simple, very much a left-clicked focus kind of game, and make something that's really powerful by being easy and accessible to use. Any feedback right now on this, definitely going to read it, might take it into account. And thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next update. Peace.